I have turned 100,000 worlds to dust looking for anti-life, looking for those who robbed me of my glory. I will stride across their bones and bask in the glow of anti-life, and all of existence shall be mine. Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse, the Justice League Snyder Cut, Darkseid. The ultimate oppressor, Darkseid lords over the nightmare planet Apocalypse, ruling through force and intimidation. One of the most powerful characters in the DC comics, the evil despot can shoot deadly rays from his eyes known as Omega Beams, seeking to eliminate all free will from the universe. Darkseid has conquered a multitude of worlds, and his sights are now set on Earth. Before we get the review started here for Uxas, technically that is his name before he becomes Darkseid. The first thing we're going to want to do is figure out how tall the figure stands. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my tape measure right to the very top of his head. We're going to measure it across like there and stop it right there. And Darkseid stands 10.5 inches in height. He is pretty big. We're going to switch that over to centimeters, revealing that the figure is 26.7 centimeters tall. Getting going with some size comparisons, let's move over Darkseid. And we'll bring in another big one. Here he is next to Steppenwolf. Steppenwolf, surprisingly, is taller than Darkseid, but I guess once you factor in the fact that he's got that crest piece that's on top of his head, that does give him some extra lift. To be fair, though, that does wrap around his existing head, so really that is the tallest point on Steppenwolf anyways. And then for comparisons next to just a regular DC Multiverse figure, here he is next to Black Suit Superman. Which again, when you're looking at it and you're comparing it to the bigger sized figures that McFarlane Toys have released, they're roughly going to be about a torso bit taller than a smaller standard DC Multiverse figure. Again, this is a case where a figure isn't going to come with much in the way of accessories. Darkseid does come included with a display stand, but before we get looking at that, we'll have a look at the trading card that comes included with it. Even though technically it does say Darkseid down below, this really is Uxas before he gains the Omega effect. Technically, his skin would turn stone after granting the powers of the Omega effect. So really, Uxas here probably shouldn't have been this stone gray. We are getting, of course, or it has already been released, a full armored Darkseid, which would be a little bit more closer to the way the character is supposed to be. Short of this actually saying Uxas down below, at least it's pulling it from the source material, and you see the character holding the spear in his hand. Flipping around to the back, the source, again, real name, Uxas, and the source is Justice League Director's Cut, Film 2021, with a read-up that you can pause and read if you'd like, or again, it's the read-up that we do at the beginning of the review. Putting that then to the side, the figure does also come included with a display stand. Yes, the same stand that we've seen with the other DC Multiverse figures, well, most of them at least. The flying characters like Superman, for example, would come in with flight stands, but these ones are just basically your regular black display stand with the DC logo down below here. It does fit on either one of Darkseid's feet. If you flip it up, actually, he does have peg holes on the undersides of both of his heels. So yeah, you can use it to display the figure. And actually, I do have some problems with getting Darkseid to stand. More on that in a second. The figure also comes included with his trademark spear, the staff weapon that he uses at the beginning, or that flashback scene when Darkseid first is on planet Earth. It's molded here of a very soft plastic. And actually, comparing it to the one that came included with Steppenwolf, actually, it's a little harder to get Steppenwolf's right now because it's currently in his hand, but grabbing Steppenwolf really as a whole, you'll remember Steppenwolf actually had part of his axe was removable. The only reason why I'm drawing everyone's attention to this, just go ahead and remove this. Very difficult and stubborn to remove. Just taking it out of his hands. I know I'm spending so much time drawing everyone's attention to this, but actually, this is what I want to draw your attention to, the fact that the axe that for Steppenwolf was something that could separate in half. It came rather in handy to fit it inside of his hands because his fingers, as you remember, were so close together. It looked like a spider's face. The reason why I'm using this as the comparison is because when we look at the weapon that comes included with Darkseid, it doesn't have a place to separate. It's something you have to fit in between his hands. And I've actually noticed that when it comes to Darkseid's hands, the plastic that they're using is so very dense to the point where you can't even pry it away. One workaround you can certainly do is heat the hands, put it either in hot water or take a hairdryer and I don't know why I have to use always sound effects, but just soften up the plastic. Or what you can also do too is just take the staff. If you put it in on an angle like this, all you really have to do is get it around his thumb. Once it's around his thumb, all you really have to do then is just twist it around. It's a shorter fix. It's a lot easier to get it into his hand, and then you don't have to worry about fighting to pry the fingers away. And that's what the character looks like when he's got the weapon in his hand. Likely going to be the way I'm going to display the figure. Let's go ahead and then remove this out of his hand, reversing the process that we just did. Just twist it up like this just to get it around the 4 fingers, and then from there just bend it around the thumb. Super easy peasy. Did I just say easy peasy? I did. Getting a closer look, I should say, at Uxas here. Sort of we were teased by the idea that we were getting this figure and was being branded and marketed as Darkseid. Until really following and watching the movie do we actually know that this is his first look in the movie before gaining the abilities later on of the Omega effect and becoming Darkseid. Technically, again, his skin I don't think should be gray just yet. Those are things that he gains later on. The detailing done to his face for the first time that we're getting this figure is really good. I like the darker colors they did around the eyes, and making use of only just small little dollops of yellow give a nice beady-eyed effect to the figure's face sculpt. Really like that. Of course, it's very much traditional Darkseid, especially when you're looking at the headdress piece that he wears. While maybe, yes, the rest of his body does lose a little bit not having the armor in place, this is something that will be rectified with the follow-up release that McFarlane Toys is doing of an official Darkseid. It's basically going to give us the same figure, just with the additional armor on the front. You get teased, though, what it does look like by looking around to the back of the figure. This overlapping effect of the plastic molding, very nicely painted here in the metallic. I'm guessing they probably used the darker plastic and then painted over top of it this really exquisite metallic blue. And it does give a nice shiny effect to it as well. Now, sort of use your imagination and take this and sort of just repeat that in your mind and just sort of do the exact same thing on the front. That's basically what the Darkseid's going to look like. Uxas basically is not going to have any of that, just only some places, like the lower skirting, for example, the top of the shoulder, of course, we already looked at, and the places on his arms as well are all places that get that. But really, again, I like the detail work that they've done to it. The skirting is generally quite soft, and as you'll see, if I just flip this up, it's only attached by a very small strand of plastic. Could there not have been a more secure way of attaching this to the figure's body? The side skirts aren't so much the issue, nor is this one really, because it's just a continuation of the stuff that's around it. But I am worried about this back flap, just for the very limited amount of plastic that's keeping everything in place. Don't want to bend that back too many times, though. The sculpt work on also his body is nice, too. Could have maybe been a little more of a matte treatment. I feel like his skin is a little too shiny. But, though, to its credit, it's sculpted rather nicely. And they've also brushed just a very mild amount of a darker color over top of it, so the details do stand out. You have the familiar Omega logo right in the middle there, which, again, would be accented more so when we look at the second issued Darkseid in a future review. It's a very, very tall figure. I do have some difficulty, though, and I want to draw your attention to his feet. His feet on the one side are single. His foot on the one side isn't so much of an issue. I can move it. Well, I can't bend it back and forth. This figure seems more limited to just a swivel back and forth, a hinge back and forth like this. He does have toe articulation. I know it's articulation. We don't want to talk about that yet, but something is wonky on this side of his body. And if you look at it, his kneecap rotates along with his boot, but his boot is actually a separate piece. Does that make sense? So it's like his lower leg is one piece. You can see it moving there. But if you just try to move just the boot by itself, you see that it does move by itself also. Why I say that, though, is when we get to this leg, it looks like it's off aligned. I'm going to have to see if I can maybe pry this off or try to rotate this on its own. Because in order to have the kneecap lined up like this, you probably can see then I have to have the boot off aligned instead of having it straight. If I have it straight, well, the kneecap is off to the side. Probably this one was misassembled, I think slightly incorrect. And there's also something really wonky when it comes to his feet, or again, this one single foot. It doesn't seem to want to be completely flat. This one foot's fine, the one that I'm pointing at right now, but there's something off, like I said, on this foot here. Again, I'm going to try to see if I can heat that up a little bit. Between that and between the way that the boot has been assembled here, it does make the figure of mine, at least, a little more off-kiltered. Almost as if he's not standing properly. I didn't snap anything, by the way. That was just his foot I was pressing down. It does, like I said, cause the figure, I don't know if you can even see it. He sort of then leans awkwardly off to the one side. I'm going to have to, again, do, I think, a little bit of customization. Maybe if I can take his lower boot off. The leg isn't so much the issue. Like, the thighs are fine. The kneecaps, I would imagine, is fine. It just involves me having to somehow pop the boot off, rotate it and put it in the place where it's supposed to be, and then do something with the one foot that, as you can see, is just wandering off to the side. Running through the posability on Uxas, his head rotates all the way around. It hinges up, it hinges down, and you can also slightly rock it back and forth. Again, I love those eyes. Super, super cool. As for his arms, now his arms very comfortably can hinge out beyond even the point of a 90-degree angle bend. So he can go for those big hugs, those big hugs. I don't know if I would be hugging him necessarily. His arms rotate all the way around, and as you can see, his armor, because it only stops at around the area of his shoulders, his arms are more free and able to move all the way around. No problems whatsoever. He does have a bicep swivel. The figure also does have a double hinge on the elbow, so if Darkseid wants to go for those deep thoughts somewhere out in the woods, he can do that. The hands rotate all the way around. You kind of have to get around, let me just flip this around so you can see it on this side, kind of have to get around the gauntlet piece. At least it's a softer plastic, so as I'm moving the wrist back and forth, you can sort of see it gets out of the way. Get out of the way already. It does. It's fine. It's not going to get in the way. Upper torso ball joint. The figure also has quite a generous lower torso ball joint. And because this is all softer plastic, it means that when you are rotating, it doesn't feel like there's any real friction holding it back. The legs split out, and again, because they're using softer plastic tapping on both sides right here, it means that the skirts also stay out of the way of things as well. Legs go forward, legs go back. Again, just worrying about that one back area. That's just the amount of plastic right there that's holding everything together. That makes me a little worrisome. Swivel, though, at the top of the bicep, at the top of the thigh, where that's essentially attached, there's the crotch shot of the figure. He does have a single hinge on the knee, which, again, I probably shouldn't have even looked at this knee as the place to bend the knee. The knee bends fine on this side. Something, though, about the assembly on this side, it's giving me some real problems. The feet rock only back and forth just a little bit. I mean, they're not really intended to do that. They hinge, however, forward and back. And because they're using, again, softer plastic, basically all the armor pieces are soft plastic. It means that the feet are free and easy to go where they want. You can move them back and forth quite a lot, actually. He does also have, again, that toe articulation. Short of the one problem that I have with this particular figure's foot, I can't imagine it's across the board. If you have picked this figure up for yourself, let me know if you have similar issues with your feet. Not your feet, but Darkseid's feet. I'm going to have to kind of just off-align it for the time being. But definitely I'm going to have to heat that up, I think, and do some disassembly, see if I can fix the problem at hand. Short of that, and the fact that, and honestly, I would have preferred to get Darkseid. Uxas is nice. I like the idea of getting him as he's given that flashback scene in the movie. But personally, I would love just to display him as Darkseid. I picked this one up as a pre-order, and then later on just realized that, well, they are going to be releasing and following up with a Darkseid in armor. That's going to be the figure I would have preferred of the two. It's not a bad looking figure, but it's sort of, I feel like it's almost there. And it's not all the way there, because all the way there would have been the Darkseid, the fully armored up version that we're going to be getting on later on. Like I said, well, I'm sure several months from now. It's probably already out, but the Darkseid with the armor is really the one I would have wanted to have in my collection. I wouldn't necessarily say that the Uxas version of Darkseid is a buyer's remorse on my part. At the end of the day, I'm still glad to get this particular mold in my collection. And of course, I'm still the person that, even though I already have one figure with a specific look, I'm still going to be that guy that's buying the figure later on because they've given him a helmet, or they're giving him an armor, or in this case, certainly with Darkseid, he's a little bit more looking like Darkseid than what we're getting right here. Stripped down without his armor, and to my understanding, without the Omega effect, which is one of the reasons why he was so easily defeated in the flashback scene, which then is sort of debatable as to why he even has the stone skin in the first place. Still, as a stripped-down version of Darkseid, he actually presents rather nicely. He's a nice big-sized figure that really, for all intensive purposes, could have been released as a Build-A-Figure, and they could have just had these pieces of Uxas as part of all the figures that were released under the Snyder Cut. For one reason or another, McFarlane Toys decided to release both Steppenwolf and Darkseid as standalone figures. And actually, that's a better thing, because if you didn't want to get all of the figures leading up to this and you just want to get Darkseid, or you just want to get Steppenwolf, you can do that. And that's always a good thing as well. What do you guys think here of Uxas's version? the Uxas look of Darkseid, pre-Darkseid. Whether you picked this figure up for yourself or based on this review, let me know what you think of the figure down below in the comments section. And also, if you are new to this channel, enjoying all the content you're seeing, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Keep your apocalyptic peepers peeled. Boy, that was a bit of a train wreck to say. But make sure you keep your peepers peeled to this channel, because there will be, in fact, more DC Multiverse reviews lined up and coming your way. Thanks for watching. See you guys next time.